My name is Richard Selden. I like the fact that the best part about it is surfing, being surrounded by snow-capped mountains, which typically is what happens because the wind really kicks up in the fall and winter, and that's when you can surf in the lake. Well, it's quite different than surfing in the ocean. You have a lack of salinity, so it's a much different feel. You can move around a little bit quicker. It just seems like it's more of a free-flowing environment, especially because there's so much energy happening in such a contained area right when you are surfing. The only way it works is if there is a huge wind event, which is different from the ocean where the swells travel from far away. Typically surfing on a windy day, a very windy day in the ocean is not ideal. You usually wait for the wind to die down, or ideally go away, or come from a offshore direction to where it cleans the waves up. When you're surfing in the lake, it's all onshore, it's fast, it's intense, and it's a lot like a washing machine at times. It happens typically from September all the way through the spring, and usually in front of a sizable storm. So the best time is anywhere from late September through January, or let's say December, when, it's not a frozen tundra up there. It's still, the air is still a little bit warm and the water's still a little bit warm, but these huge storms are moving in. Typically the first big storm events of the year produce the best waves as well. It takes sustained winds of at least 25 miles an hour, and as long as they kick up and start blowing, within an hour of there being sustained winds of 25 miles an hour, there's going to be surfable waves. And usually these wind events will only last for a day or so, 8 hours. So you want to get there right in the middle, ideally, when everything has the most energy, when the most energy has collected in the actual water. And this typically happens when sustained winds will happen coming out of the southwest, blowing all the energy towards the north and east shores of the lake, and that's when you want to get in there. There have been wind events that have come out of the east and produced really good waves on the west shore, which I was there a few years ago for one of those, and that was really special. But typically it's southwest winds, which is normally what we're getting when we get big storms. I probably have at least 50 days under my belt out there over the last 10 years. Yeah, for a while I was averaging, I'd go 10 times a year for a couple of years straight. And then now I don't live at the lake, so it's much more sporadic. I didn't go all last year, but when I lived there, I was constantly jumping in the water. Even on days at the end of the summer, which were really a lot smaller wind events, if you have a big enough board, you can catch some waves. I personally prefer that. There are guys out there who ride shortboards. They're usually much better surfers than I am. But I surf a big board anyway, even when I'm in the ocean, and I prefer using that, especially on small waves, to be able to catch the wave far out and ride it as long as possible. Doing any activity in the mountains provides, a pretty strong feeling of euphoria for me. And because I'm so passionate about getting in the water, and I also have sort of a hole in my heart about living in the desert / mountains to where I can't go into the ocean whenever I want. And that's not, that wasn't the case when I was growing up. So when I can, have an experience similar to an ocean experience in Lake Tahoe, I really walk away on cloud nine. I probably some of the best feelings that I could have is getting out of a nice surf session in Lake Tahoe. They need to kind of understand what they're getting into. It's very much a cold water activity. They need to have the right equipment. They need to know where to go, because there's only a few beaches where this actually happens. Typically, like from Sand Harbor all the way through all the town beaches in Incline. That's typically going to be the spot. Then, if it's a bigger wind event with bigger swell, anywhere on the North Shore, Kings Beach, Tahoe Vista, Carnelian Bay, that will all become surfable too. And then there's days where you want to move more north because the East Shore is a little too crazy. That's gets the most action. So there's some days which really strong events where it's the washing machine effect is too strong and there's not really any formation in any of the waves. At that case, when it's like that, that's when you want to start going more north and looking down towards Agate Bay or Tahoe Vista, Agate Bay, Carnelian Bay, where there's all sorts of nooks and crannies that can protect you from the wind. And those are actually the best days, when it's really big and you go into one of those little protected coves. Then the waves are coming in nice and clean, similar to an ocean experience. Wetsuit, a board. You have to have all your own stuff. You can't rent or really buy anything you need here. There's lots of shops that sell or rent stand-up paddle boards. You can use a stand-up paddle board. You can paddle one and surf it like a surfboard. That's actually a really good time when you are surfing small waves in a lake. They need to understand it's not the ocean, and it's quite a different experience. So if you've surfed in the ocean and you're expecting that same experience, obviously you got to be a little realistic. Like, it's a lake. The waves come a lot more frequency, one after the other the whole time. You're getting kind of beat up. You're surfing very small waves, very short rides. It's kind of like it's an experience for someone who really doesn't care about the quality of the wave they're surfing. And I grew up surfing and skiing on the East Coast where, quality wasn't always our, best attribute. It was more just being excited to go out in anything. So that's why I like the lake so much, because it reminds me of some of the crappy surfing I used to do on the East Coast, which I'm very nostalgic about. I mean, if I could say one thing, it would be when you're on the East Shore, especially the East Shore and the West Shore, after a storm event, which typically after these big winds and, waves and all that, it's the winter time, so people aren't really walking around on the beach. But take a good look at the shoreline after these storms, because you get an idea of just how much garbage is in the lake, especially in that corner where the East and North Shore meets. It is a magnet for all the trash that people threw out into the water or into the shoreline all summer long. So that's one of the more profound things for me being out there, is you see just how polluted Lake Tahoe is. And it gives you a really unique perspective, and it's something to really consider when you're enjoying this absolutely pristine mountain environment. And I'm not saying to go on the beach and pick up all the trash, but really remember that you are stewards of this lake, and you need to protect it in a proper way if you want to expect to be able to enjoy it, for years to come.